Hello, I'm Carl Chinn, President of the Faith-Based Security Network. One of the most valuable resources of the FBSN is that collective acumen of the members. Now, there can be no collective acumen without individual expertise and experience, but that is often isolated. We are sharing some of those individual member stories behind our collaboration of expertise.
You and I were visiting in a saltgrass steakhouse years ago in Colorado Springs, and I mentioned to you that I was wanting to start an organization where uh, church security operators and pastors and law enforcement people could have a membership organization where they could connect with each other. And you responded very well to that night, and you said, I would be a part of that. And I know a man like you, there's a lot of people who seek to pull you into whatever, but something made you respond that way that night when Dina and I were sitting at supper with you. What was it about the idea of this that made you say I would be a part of that?
Well, the first thing is your personal heart in this. Other organizations that people had talked to me about and things. One of the things I always look for is the heart of the individual that's heading the organization. And your heart was not to develop a cash cow. It wasn't to do something for you personally. You genuinely wanted to help the people that were actually out there in the field doing the work. You really, truly wanted to make the congregations safer. You really legitimately wanted to provide better access to information. And I thought that that was a tremendous thing when you began to tell me that the Lord shared with you that that's what he wanted you to do. And the funny thing is I'd been actually looking at starting an organization similarly called the Boatmen.
Really?
And then when you said that you were going to do it, I'm like, yeah, now I don't, this is awesome because there's somebody that I love, somebody that I trust, somebody that has the right heart to have the individuals. And so I instantly stopped doing that and saw what I could do to help the FBSN.
Wow, I never knew that part, Kurt. You never shared that with me
Yeah.
before, but I know I've had other people in the membership come to me and say that they were planning to start some sort of organization because it's the organization that was needed. Up
Hmm.
until the foundation of the FBSN, all these different churches and faith-based organizations, parachurch organizations. It was what I saw from my standpoint was they were all silos and stovepipes of information. There was no information sharing, or let me say, very little information sharing from one church to another or from any group. And we had great success with our Colorado Springs coalition of churches helping other churches, but I had this heart to see it go nationwide. And were you in on that very first? I would call it a Zoom call, but it wasn't Zoom. I used back in those days webinars on fire,
Well,
and
no, I wasn't. If you remember, I actually told you I didn't want to really. I would help you any way that I could, but because were talking then about being on the board, and I'm like, I don't think I want to do that. Uh, and I said, but I would do anything I could to support you and things like that. And so, no, I wasn't involved in that in the initial spark. But I do believe I was the first paid member. Actually, I think
you absolutely were.
and I actually think I actually gave my membership before the organization was actually
I
up and running.
as yeah, I that very well could be. I don't recall how that worked, but I do know this. I know sitting at Dave Grossman's table uh, at his home in Illinois, I mentioned it to he and Jimmy Meeks, and they both immediately, said, we'll be the first members. And so I kind of made them honorary members.
Right.
But you were the first actual paying member, number one, and have been ever since you became a member. And that is so very special to me, Kurt. That webinar that I just mentioned, as I recall, there were 51 people on it, and I had sent it out to a group of folks, and I said, okay, now we are ready to start taking memberships. We had found a membership management software that would work. It was a great You've startup. Lived through all that history. You have watched it all.
That day at Saltgrass, you were still talking to the attorney about setting up the 501c3, and we were discussing what was the difference, setting it up as a ministry versus setting it up as like a corporation organization. And we were discussing, and we talked about how that the Lord had put this in your heart, and you truly wanted it to be a ministry. That it was going to be, it wasn't just a corporation, it wasn't just an organization, but it was truly a Jesus-centered, Christ-centered organization. That's what you had in your heart. And actually that's what I was sowing into. I said, well, I'm going to help you with all the legal fees and all that other stuff. And so I remember we were at that point. And I think you invited me to the webinar, but I think I was overseas at the time.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. And so, that was, but again, you were talking about silos. To me, it was always more than silos. There's organizations out there that are organizations merely for the good of the founders, really. They want to be a licensing arm. They want to be they want that space. They want to say our piece of paper is more important than anybody else's, but it's really for the good of themselves. And one of the things about you, and really about the FBSN and about our board members today, really, is it's really about the good of the members. It's about the good of the body of Christ. It's about the good of the churches themselves. And so that part was the thing that really drew me to get involved was that.
I remember competition was the thing that was plaguing me so much. Competition and everybody scrambling, not everybody, but a certain number of groups, people, men, in this space. It's like they were scrambling to be king of the mountain. And that was just turning me off. I remember a conversation with one of those leaders, and I wouldn't mention his name for anything, but we were sitting at a restaurant in Houston, actually, in 2008, and he was telling me all this stuff, and I said, the problem I see in that, it sounds very competitive. I said, when you talk about these other people, it would be like James Dobson slamming Billy Graham.
Right.
And I said, I don't see that happening in the Christ church. I see people working together. And boy, he let me know right away how he'd quit a full-time job and he'd invested heavily in this, and he was all about making this be an income. And in my heart, I was just feeling like this isn't right. This is not what it's about. This is about protecting people. And man, you saw that so clearly, and you have been such a strong supporter of the FBSN through the years. You have done training. You're excellent at training. And for those of you who haven't seen the video on Kurt talking about his executive protection program, I encourage you to go over there and look at that. Kurt, you are a consummate professional, and you're a pastor of pastors. and now thrown back into the realm of even pastoring a specific church while it's out of a pastor. So you still step back into that role very frequently, and we love hearing from you at the SOS. And now you are not only a board member, which you told me at the Saltgrass so many years ago, you just didn't have time to do that, but there came a time when things switched. And now you're not only a board member, you're the vice chairman of the board. And, you and David Dixon, the two leaders of the board, are just two very strong men who have come alongside me and helped us really shape the FBSN for the next generation. And I am just so thankful for that. What would you say to those listening from a vice chair of the board view? Is the FBSN the organization that you saw at that table so many years ago, or the things
I believe so. I believe so. I mean, I think we had a fight to bring it back to its original heart. And I think that's important, that we wanted to stay with what did Jesus tell you to do all those years ago. That's still really what I support. I believe that you wanted the FBSN, and still do, and we all do, want to be the best faith-based security organization out there, but we want it for a different purpose than monetary gain, able to help these leaders, help people get accurate, correct tools in some congregations that can't necessarily afford consultants and things like that. I mean, to give you an example, and this is going to sound arrogant, but I mean, I get paid $750 for a half an hour phone call to consult on security stuff normally, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just the other day, and not everybody can afford that. Just the other day, we had a pastor and FBSN member contact me because whenever you're listening to this, it's been just over a month since Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and he had the unenviable task of his pastor this was a smaller church, having to do a baptism on a baseball field, and it would be perfect if you were a sniper. And so he reached out and said, "Hey, can I talk to you about this?" And where normally he would have had to have paid a lot of money to be able to sit down and talk about these things, those things were available to him absolutely free to talk about that. And that was what you always wanted with all, it's interesting you brought up David Dixon. David Dixon and you are the driving forces behind the FBSN today. But it's interesting having David and I as chair and vice chair, because we have such vastly separate backgrounds. Okay. And this is the strength of the FBSN. He is career law enforcement, and really, David was also a premier pioneer in church security. He was thinking about church security long before anybody else was, right? And so it's interesting to me because now I'm on the executive protection side of things, right? I've always been on the executive protection side of things. I could not be an officer. That's been proven over and over again. I remember years ago, one of the people that trained me said, there was somebody talking to me about coming into law enforcement, and he says, don't bother. He said, one, you wouldn't like the money, and two, you could never play by their rules. And they were right. and so you have these vastly different perspectives. You have David able to speak to so many things. And then with me, I'm on the other side. I've been in executive protection really since I was a kid. It was one of I really kind of my first job, so to speak. And being able to hear from those different perspectives, because we do have vastly different perspectives, law enforcement and executive protection. But you can have all of that in the FBSN. That's the strength of the FBSN, is the fact that we have nearly 900 members now with a lifetime experience, a lifetime of solving problems. That you're really not going to come up with a problem that one of our membership has not encountered. In a lot of ways, with the strength of the board that we have today, most of the board members could speak to having your problem and things. If not, some of the other our regional representatives, those people can help in those things, and that's the strength of it. That you can legitimately call somebody that's actually been there, can speak to that situation, can help and walk you through it, all for a very low price membership, in addition to all the training that we do through our online management system. So I think it's exactly moving in the direction. We're not where we want to be. There's a lot of great plans that we have ahead, but I believe it's exactly what Jesus began to speak to you about, and about treating everybody the same, from the mega church to the 10-person church, making sure everybody had access to information, to training, to wisdom, making sure that every piece, everybody understood they were valuable, that even if you were doing security at the 10-member church, you still had something to offer the body of Christ. It was still important that you do what you do. I think that is being fulfilled. And that's why I believe in the FBSN.
What an incredibly good note to end on. I feel encouraged today. I've begun to realize that and I know you'll recognize this, I tend to hold on to things too tightly and say, no, let me approve that. Let me help edit that and finesse that. And I've just begun to recognize, especially this last year, that I have to let things go. We've got good people who are doing many good activities, some of which I don't even know about anymore, Kurt. And you've encouraged me. I hope this will encourage you as other members to get in, stay in, and be connected, be active. We've said so often that to just be a member is like having a gym card and never going to the gym. There's a world of YouTube resources out there that we're putting out constantly. There's so many resources available in our member-only forum. There's the way we come together every Saturday. There's a lot happening. And
and also, let me just say about the YouTube content. The thing I like about the FBSN is we are realistic, real, and not trying to sensationalize. There's a lot of people out there with YouTube content. The challenge is it's not realistic, and they say things for the hype of it, whereas we're on the other side of it, where we're trying to give you accurate information, not try to work you up and get you into a frenzy, not trying to play to all that. We're legitimately trying to help you to make accurate decisions. And this world today, that's what we need, and that's what the FBN is providing by this new content.
Well said. Well